Here's tonight's agenda. So we're going to start with some basic gradebook stuff. And for some of you, you may have been through this, but keep in mind when we put this workshop together, we wanted to ensure that that we covered all the bases, and hopefully there's some things that would be new to some of you. So starting from the gradebook setup, talking about categories, talking about how important those are and what they mean to the gradebook itself, the alignment with the syllabus, and for some of you will be like, yeah, Dawn, I know that, but just a reminder maybe for some, gradebook overview, list versus grid, setting the overall grade calculation, weighted versus total points, and then some grading options will be some of the little tips and tricks, filtering, annotating, not specifically how to annotate, but where the tool's at when it appears, how to give feedback, messaging students, and then giving exceptions. And again, if something comes up in the course of the workshop, feel free to type your question into the comment bubble, and Jamie will be happy to grab that for you. And then we will open it up at the end and answer any questions. So without further ado, I'm going to jump out of here and go over into my little simulated course. And of course, tonight's session is on the gradebook, specifically the Ultra Gradebook. So we're going to begin here in the gradebook, and I completely started raw, no grading done. Like I just copied over my course content. And one of the things that I always like to suggest to all instructors, Jamie and I like to suggest, is to set your gradebook up immediately. And what we have found and what we've experienced is when that doesn't happen, sometimes after you start the class, start grading items, and then set your gradebook up. And we have seen that all of a sudden the student's grade goes from an A maybe to a C based on how you do your grading schema. So it's really important. And the first place that I usually recommend starting is setting up categories. So even though Blackboard comes with some preset categories, many of us have projects or essays or different things that we perhaps give higher points to, or we weight it higher, and it's in a category all by itself as an example. And so I always say do that first. So if you're not familiar with the Ultra Gradebook, I'm just going to do a quick overview here of the list versus the grid view, and then we'll jump into categories. Right now, we're in what's called the Gradable Item List View. This is where you're going to see the list of all your assignments here on the left. These are all hyperlinks directly to the assignment. It goes first to an assignment list where it says contents and settings, and then you'll see the list of students. The next column, the due date, is only displayed if you use due dates in your course. So in this particular course, when the instructor set it up, they put due dates. So that's why you see the display of due dates. Status. In this particular scenario, you see that in the 4 students that are enrolled, 2 of them have submitted to the online discussion board. You see that the Learning Online quiz is now complete. This one says all graded, and then so on and so forth. You can see nothing to grade. One of the common questions that we get is, what is the difference between complete and all graded? And probably 95% of the time, the reason why we see all graded, so all graded appears when all submitted attempts are graded and posted, but some students have not submitted work yet and don't have a grade. And 95% of the time, the student that hasn't submitted work yet is ourself, meaning we have gone in, we've used student preview. The minute that you execute student preview, it creates a student preview user and it adds it to the gradebook. So many a times when you see, in this example, 3 missing, probably one of those 3 are going to be your student preview user. And so it may be that it's saying all graded because 1 out of 5 have been submitted, or not, 1 has missing out of the 5, and that one is your student preview user. Now, as annoying as it can be, I know that right now we don't have the ability to give instructors permission to remove their own user, but we here on the Blackboard team can remove that student user out of your gradebook, or you can simply go in and put a grade in there, 0, etc. And that once all of your students' work is complete, so complete means it indicates that there are no outstanding grading tasks for that particular item. So that means here, even though it says 3 missing, in this particular course, auto zeros are set up. So zeros have populated into the fields past the due date, and that's why it's showing complete, because the instructor did all the completed grading. This one you can see 2 out of 5. It says all graded because the instructor has graded everything up to this point, but they have not, you know, that there's still an outstanding submitted item. Casey, you said you had a question about that?
Yeah, is it okay if I unmute really quick?
Sure.
Okay, so I recently discovered I tend to do mostly the grid view, and when I was on the list view, I noticed that, like, for tests, I assumed that when it says the complete, the little green check mark, that I didn't have any submissions to grade. But I just recently noticed that when a student submits a late assignment, but I've entered a 0 to let them know they missed that assignment, it still has the complete circle. So I have to drill down to go find, to recognize, I guess, basically that there actually was a submission I haven't graded. But I think maybe because I put a 0 in, it's showing me I've graded everything. And I wasn't sure if I have a setting wrong or if that's just a thing to learn with Ultra to double check that, if that makes sense.
And Casey, if I recall, that was on a discussion board. Is that correct? Your example that you're giving us here,
So this is
where
actually with tests. I
it
figured
was a
out the
test.
discussion board thing that I just have to check the discussion board. But with tests, I'm still seeing the green circle that's complete. But I'll have submissions that have come through since then if they come through late, and it still shows complete.
Does it say in the gradebook, does it actually say like new submissions next to the
No,
students
nope,
in the grid
not.
view?
It doesn't say any of that. So I have to drill down, and I didn't know if I had a setting wrong or something, or if anyone else in this session has had that issue. But I have to click on the test itself, even if it shows complete, pull up the test, go find the late submissions, and then go update them.
And so Casey, last question, and then we can always offline, Jamie and I can research that for you. Last question on that. Do you allow more than 1 attempts?
I don't.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right. Yeah, I would like to take a look at that, because I
Okay.
know, just, you know, from in gradebook standpoint, complete indicates that there's no outstanding grading task for that item. So that kind of defies what I'm saying. So I would definitely, and that literally comes from Blackboard. So I would
Okay.
definitely
Yeah.
like to see that and see. There's probably nothing else, you know, aside from maybe if you gave, you know, multiple attempts, or, you know, with like pick the highest grade. Um, so I'd love to see that as an example. That would be great.
Okay. Yeah. I'm happy to follow up with y'all. So thank you.
Okay, thanks, Casey. All right, so there's one example which is kind of an anomaly, more so because complete generally means that there's no other outstanding items. All graded generally means that there is something that still needs to be graded, as Casey gave the example, but hers is showing complete. So any questions so far just on the list view? As I move over to just some of the tools real quick, we get very, very often we get questions about how the list is displayed when you look at it in grid view, which we're going to go to in a moment. And many folks, because it's not overly obvious unless you mouse over here to the right, you see the bi-directional arrows. Just like on the content page, if you move the listed items in a certain order, they will display from left to right in the grid view. There is a way to move these items. I won't be able to demonstrate it here, but if you're interested, I'm always happy to show you how to move these using a keyboard. But essentially, you click in an area, you tab over until a little blue box appears around here, and then you can use your up and down arrow keys to move these items up and down the list. Otherwise, you left click, you disengage it off the page, and you move it with your mouse. The ellipsis, as you're probably all familiar now, you're well into the course into Ultra, using Ultra, are what we call the options menu. You can edit here or delete this particular item. So as mentioned in the agenda, there's two views. So you have list view, and then you have gradable item list view, and then you have student view, which gives you the list of all of your students. Student IDs are not displayed here. The username, when last accessed, overall grade will appear when the overall grade is set up, and you can see I have left that for now so we can go through that in this particular workshop. And then we have the ellipsis here. Now, the ellipsis has two options in this area. I can set accommodations here. So if I have a student who in the beginning of the semester approaches me, says I have a letter from Disability Services for certain accommodations, they provide you that letter. You can set the accommodation here, as well as if you're on the content page under roster, you go to that student, you can select and you can set accommodations there. You can also see here that I have the ability to message the student, and I know one feature that we don't have, but we have expressed you know, an interest, a process improvement interest in putting this in the particular task or particular gradable task, messaging the student from there. But you can currently message the student either here in the student list, or if you're on the actual student on the student list, you click on their name and you open up their grades, their listed grades, there is the ability to send a message here. The message goes to the email account that they have on file in their Blackboard course, and there's not an ability to check for them to be able to respond to you that way. At this point in time, I know they're doing a lot of work on messaging. Hopefully in the fall that'll be an improved tool. Aside from the list view, or we call it the hamburger menu over here on top, we have the grid view. So when I go to the grid view, in my mind, this is what I consider to be kind of the traditional view. Students' names are on the left-hand side. Gradable items are displayed up above, and as I mentioned earlier, they'll be displayed in the order that you have sorted it over on the list view. Over here on the top, we have a search tool, which I'm going to show you some tips with that later on in the hour. And then this filtering mechanism I'll display to you as well. Also, we have upload and download. And download will allow you to download an Excel file. I like to do this at the end of the semester myself, and I like to calculate different things with it, and then I save it. And then anywhere that you see this cog throughout the course, this is a setting cog if you weren't familiar with that. And I want to point out something else that maybe you know, if you haven't had the opportunity, or I know when you go in and grade, you're so busy. But on the bottom right-hand corner here, there's a little question mark. I don't know if you've ever noticed that or been curious, but if you click on that question mark and select Blackboard support, what's going to happen is these different resources open up. And I definitely invite you to click on Blackboard Help. And when you do that, if you've not done that, it actually takes you right to the gradable page, the gradebook item page. You can see here it says go to original course view. We are in the Ultra view because you are in an Ultra course. It'll open up to that. In this particular instance, it has a video in different resources that, about submissions, about setups, things like that, that, if it's in the evening hour and Blackboard Help is not available and you really want to figure something out right away and we're not available, this is a great resource. Again, all you have to do is click on that question mark, open up Blackboard Help, and it'll take you directly to the gradebook section of the Blackboard Help page. So Gradebook list and Gradebook view. List again is gradable items and students, and then you have the grid view, which we have what I call a traditional view. I mentioned in the very beginning that if I had just downloaded my content, and one of the things I would really recommend to do first is set up the gradebook. And part of doing that is ensuring that you have all the right categories so that you have the alignment of categories to your gradable items. Now, some of us use total points, some of us do graded categories. I'm going to show you the difference this evening. In the Blackboard course of Gradebook, over here I mentioned the settings cog. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the settings cog. And just really, I know all of you have gone through it. In the old Blackboard, you had to go to different places. Here, they've kind of lumped everything together. The very first section, these are actually like little mini sections, is the CFC standard. And so we've had, different folks go in. Yes, I can do that. How's that? Is that better? Can you guys see that better?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, and so Jamie and I have messed with this a little bit. We've had some instructors that, want to, no, it's okay. I have my glasses on. We have some instructors that will put, 91.5 here, and so you can do that. We would encourage you, if this is something you want to do to get more exacting on your gradebook schema, we would be happy to walk you through that. And I'm not going to go into that detail tonight, but I do want to mention that. Below that, this is just a student performance thing. It is not tied to a visa whatsoever. Those notifications, I know I saw Jen Call is here in the meeting tonight. She's had some experience with students getting activity stream alerts. I know I have mine deselected here, but what it does is if, you can set days of inactivity and if grades fall between or down below certain percentages, it will actually send the student a notification. Not tied to a visa though. Automatic zeros, I don't know how many of you are using automatic zeros. You can see in this course I have it set up. What it does is if you use due dates and a due date passes, an automatic zero assigns in that field for that student. You can override that. I used it last semester. It was wonderful. I didn't have to go through and do it. We are, and I'm always very transparent. If you guys, know me pretty well, we're having a couple courses that are having some issues with it where it's not displaying in every instance. If you have seen that on your course, please let us know. We do have an outstanding ticket, but for the most part, it works very well. I know for me last semester, it worked excellent. I had no problems with it. Scrolling down into the category area. So these are the preset categories, and I know many of you have come and visit with us, but if you do have or need to, as you're setting up your gradebook, add a category, then this is the way you would do it. If you don't have it, they don't align with any of these categories, where it says add new category, you simply click on the button, and I'm going to, because of this particular course, I am going to do the category that does not have a category by default. I type it in, I hit enter, I can change that, I can delete it at any time. And these categories do carry over when you copy this course over to another alter course. So there's a reason why I put that in there, because what I'm I'm trying to do is kind of show you a process. So I started my course, I copied the content over, and I know when I look at my syllabus, which will be my next step, that I do have a project, a big project for this particular class that is its category in itself. And so I'm going to add that category ahead of time. Let's just say I did not add that category ahead of time. So one of the things that a lot of us do is we go back to the content area, and this is going to be one of my first tips, and we'll go into the category and we'll go into the assignment and we'll click on the assignment and then we'll edit the category here. But I don't know if you knew this, in the gradebook, probably the fastest way to edit a category from the grid view is to simply click on the item, select edit here, and you can go straight to the content and settings area and modify the category here. It's a faster way, as you saw me going to the content area, going to the folder, and sometimes remembering where you put it in the folder, right? That can be, tricky sometimes. So one of the things that we see a lot, and again, I'm doing this as a general overview for everyone, is when someone comes to me and says, Dawn, I need to set up my gradebook, or to Jamie, I need to set up my gradebook. The first question I always ask every instructor is, what is your grading schema? Do you do total points? Do you do weighted categories? And believe it or not, I have some people say, I'm not sure because maybe it's the way I'm saying it, the way I'm asking. So the first thing I always do is I'll go to that instructor's syllabus. So let's use this as an example. In this particular course, this course uses weighted categories. So I know that assignments are 50%, DBs are, I call discussion boards DBs, 10%, success story project, and degree plan project is 30% as an example. Okay, I'm going to come back to my course here. I'm going to go back into the gradebook. So I have gone in and I've aligned all of my, presumably, I've aligned each one of my gradable items to the appropriate category, because before that, I've ensured that I have all the right categories set in my gradebook. Now, presently, you cannot attach a category to an item that doesn't exist. So you have to have a gradable item in your content area in order for it to be calculated in the gradebook. And I know that sounds confusing, but it'll make sense in a minute. We do know, Jamie and I do know that forthcoming with Blackboard with one of their, and I'm not sure when the release will be, you'll be able to have a gradable, you'll be able to have a column or create a column, a category, without having the gradable item yet in the gradebook. So some of us will create content as we go along, and in doing so, the category will exist. Presently, that's not the case. Presently, you have to have the gradable item in order to create the category to tie it to calculate. All right, so we've set up the, we'll assume that we have all of our categories. I showed you a quick tip on going to edit and checking your categories if you need to change them. The next thing that I need to do now in the step of the process is set up the overall grade. So in order to set up the overall grade, right now I haven't done anything. This is a clean course, but let's just say that you accidentally deleted this, okay? I can't find it anywhere. Well, if I go to the settings here, you may have seen it when I scrolled down. I also have the option here to set up overall grade category. The importance of the overall grade category is this is that green check mark that we had in original. This is the category that Aviso picks up when Mary Elizabeth runs her reports on whatever that frequency is. And second to that, this overall category has to be set at a percentage. If it's points, if it's letter grades, it will fail. It'll send a fail. It will not show that any grades can be displayed, and your department chair will receive an email, and then they'll send you an email. That's probably the biggest call that we get. So we're going to set up the overall grade category. Now, setting up the overall grade category presently, and I'm going to tell you that we do know that there's some really good changes coming down, probably August for fall in the gradebook. We have weekly calls with a Blackboard team, a dedicated Blackboard team, and so we know that. But right now, I'm going to assume that everyone either does total points or weighted categories. I just displayed to you a syllabus that said that this instructor does weighted categories. So now to set up the weighted categories, over here on the left is where you set up those either total points or weighted categories. And this is not entirely intuitive because of the language that they use. So hang in there with me. So select how the overall grade is going to be calculated. Here you have two options. Now, if it was obvious, it would say total points and graded grade category weights, right? So right now, I'm going to demonstrate just really quick for you using category weights. So because that is how this instructor has told their students that they are going to be graded on weights. So I'm going to come over here, I'm going to change the category to weights. And then I mentioned to you just briefly that it has to be displayed as a percentage. So I'm going to select that. Now, the option to show to students, you can toggle it off, but we are required to show the students that overall grade, so you want to make sure you leave it on. Now, you notice over here on the left, I have, and I use the word buckets. The team always laughs at me when I do that. But you can see by default, based on the gradable items that I have, the content that I copied over, they're all tied to some sort of category. And so when I click on this folder, I can see what is in each one of these categories. So I can see, I might look here and say, wait a minute, enrollment verification quiz doesn't belong in the assignment category. I'm going to need to fix that, right? So I'm going to leave that for now. I look at the test and the learning online quiz is here. And so it gives me a good sense. Now, discussion boards create their own category if you do weighted categories. There's no way to add them to, let's say, assignments or homework if you do. And then there's another category, homework. Now, wait a minute here. If we go back and look, I don't have homework anywhere here, right? I have not put homework as a category. So this is a great example. Before I would set my category weights, I would want to go in. This is why it's really important to set the categories. So the second thing I would do if it were me is I would just quickly make sure, if I was unsure, if I did a quick look here, that each one of my assignments, it's moving slowly, sorry guys. So I would want to ensure that each one of these assignments are tied to the right category. In this case, the way that the syllabus was set up is it falls into assignments. So I would want this to be in the assignment. So if you recall, I can't get this to move too quickly right now, but if you recall, I would go into the gradebook view. Let me just hit save and get out of here. I would go to the gradebook view and I would find that assignment, that mindset activity that was showing as homework. And here's what I would do. And I also know it because I can tell the icon is a homework icon. I would come right up here and I would quickly change it to assignments. Okay, now if I go back, now I have this icon here. I'm going to left click on it now instead of having to set it up because I've already set it up. This is how you can get into it quickly. I left click, select edit to get into calculation details. I'm going to come back over here. I'm going to change it to category weights. And now I only have 3 categories because now I have appropriately assigned. But I'm missing one. I'm missing that degree project plan. It's not in any one of these, right? And I'm missing it. So now I have to add one. But the degree project plan is something that's due at the end of the semester. So my students, I'm not going to actually put a folder out there, let's say till the end of the semester. So what do? I need a gradable item to add a category to. So what I'm going to do, and I'm going to do it over here on the left so that you can just see it, but if you put your mouse anywhere between these lines, you're going to see a plus sign, just like you do on the content page, which means to add an item. So I'm going to click here, and I have 3 options. I can add a calculation, I can add an item, or I can add attendance. I'm going to pick add an item because I want to add a gradable item. So I'm going to click here, and now I'm going to make a category, not a category, a column, so I can tie it to that for now. And so I'll put my points, and the most importantly, I'm going to tie it to that category. Now you're probably thinking in your mind, now wait a minute, Dawn, you have this here, but on the content page, you're probably going to put an assignment in there and tie it to there. You're absolutely right. But for right now, so I can set up my gradebook, I'm going to put in a column so I can set my weighted categories, because once I create the actual assignment on the content page, I'm going to be able to add it to the same category. So my categories in my overall calculation won't go away, but I can delete this manual column that I added later on. This is also the same way you would add a manual column. Some of us like to give participation points, or, I hate to say attendance because there is an attendance tool you can use, but something like that. So you can add a manual column at any time. Some of us have hybrid classes where we meet a lot in face-to-face, and so students hand in assignments, I'll create a manual column, I'll enter in those grades. So just for the point of this exercise, I'm going to go back in. Now you can see I have created another category with an attached column. Once I create that, that assignment, it'll be listed under here. I can go in and delete this one. Now I'm ready to go in and distribute my weights accordingly. So, and I'm just going to, off the top of my head, I'm just going to put in those percents. It has to equal 100% in order for it to allow you to save that calculation. So once again, the overall settings would be graded category weights, because that's what I told my students. I'm going to grade them on weights. I put in my weights and I hit save. Now there's a couple of extra tools in here that may be of value to some of us. For example, add a rule. If you're an instructor that likes to drop the lowest or highest grade, this is the tool that you could use, and it would be for this particular category. So I would click this to add a rule. I would enable it, and then what would happen, there's only one item in there, so that one's not going to work for me. Let's go to this one where I've got 5. So I'm going to enable it. I can pick drop scores or use only a total calculation. I'm going to do drop scores. And I'm going to say drop one of the lowest scores. And now the rule has been added. I don't recommend doing this in the beginning of the semester. I'll give you an example. Working with an instructor recently, only had 1, maybe 2 assignments in the assignment category. Dropped the lowest score. Student didn't do 1 assignment. I think had a 0 on 1, low score. And so it confused the system. It really kind of tanked their grade. So I recommend doing this either near the end of the semester or maybe once you've kind of got some progress going for a while. This little no or 0, this is an exempt. If you want to, I can't imagine exempting a whole category, but if you open up this assignment category and you see all the listed items, many folks like to drop or exempt the enrollment verification quiz from the overall grade. All you simply have to do is click that. It'll exempt that from the overall grade. So those are just a couple of features if I do overall grades. Well, let's say the opposite. Let's say I am an instructor that does total points. Everything's level playing field. I do all my grading. Each item is 100 points, as you can see here, and I've got 500 points in my class, and whatever you get out of 500, that division, that's what your percentage is going to be. When you can see here, I didn't do this correctly because I didn't change it to percentage. This definitely needs to be displayed as percentage, but we'll do that in a moment. So I'm a total points instructor. How do I add total points? This is a two-step process. What I have to do is I have to create a column called total points, put in that calculation. I have to computate that calculation, and then make it talk to the overall grade. So here's how you do that. I come between the column, I hit the plus sign. I'm going to now select add a calculation. Now I'm going to give that calculation a name that makes sense. So for me, I'm going to put total points. The next thing I can do is I can select a grading schema. How do I want it to display? Do I want it to display as total points? Do I want it to display as percentage? Do I want it to display a CFC standard, which would be a letter grade? I don't recommend percentage because you'll have the overall grade column that's going to view as percentage, and then this, unless in fact you hide it from the students and you're just doing it so it's running it in the background. So certainly you can have it display any way you want. I'm going to pick CFC standard. Now, for my math folks, we have functions and variables. Now we have seen, and Jamie and I have worked with different professors that do average calculations and different type of calculations. This is the area that you would do that in, but tonight I'm only going to show you total points. So I'm going to select the mathematical operator of total. And you notice when I click total, it comes up with brackets, a little plus sign, a little drop down arrow, and an X. An X is going to delete that variable. The drop down arrow is what I want to select. So I'm going to click on that drop down arrow, which is going to display a panel. Now I'm not doing categories, I'm doing total points. So what I want to do is I want to come down to the coursework area if I'm doing total points, and I want to select everything that I want to include in that overall total point calculation. And you notice as I am doing that, the mathematical operator parenthetically has all of those gradable items listed between the parentheses. And basically what it's saying is, from a mathematical standpoint, oh, you want the total of all of these items. And I'm going to say yes. So I'm going to click yes. Okay. It tells me it's a valid expression. That means that there's no problems in the math. When you start doing some other operators added to the variables or the functions, then you definitely want to validate to make sure that your math is correct. So once I set this up and I set visibility whether I want students to see it or not, and select my grading viewable schema, I'm set with total points. But that's not all. I need to have this talk to this, because right now it's not talking to it. So I'm going to go back into the overall calculation, hit edit, and I am no longer doing category weights. Now I mentioned to you this is not overtly obvious. This should probably say total points, or we should have an option of total points. And I am going to tell you that that is coming down the road. But for right now, what you do is you're going to select gradable item weights. So I'm going to pick gradable item weights. I have to change this to be percentage, so it displays as percentage. And now I come over here and I have, you notice it automatically, like mathematically distribute evenly as much as it could. There's probably 11 items here by percentages. Now, some folks like to do each individual item weighted. You could do that, and that's how you would do this. But we're choosing to do total points. So what I have to do is I've got to get rid of all of these fields. And there's not a select all, unfortunately, at this point. But I'm just going to do this real quick. Luckily, I didn't put a lot of content in here. Okay. But I want total points to compute into my overall grade setting. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to tell it I want 100% of what I've computed into total points to be displayed as my overall grade. So I'm going to click Save. I want to make sure all these other fields are 0. It adds to 100%. This is 100%. Set as percentage. And now my overall grade is displayed as a percentage, and this grade is reflective of the total points that the students are getting. And you notice I set it to a letter grade, so it's also going to display a letter grade for the student. And you can move this back in list view if you want to move that up next to the overall grade, just so it's better visibility. Let me do that here real quick. When I come up here, it's now going to be in the column next to it. Again, this is showing an X through it or a line through it because it's not visible to students. Very easily, you could go in, hit edit, and change that visibility. I'm going to do a quick pause and see if there's any questions. I know I see Jamie's probably been answering a lot of questions in the comments field. Are there any questions that anybody has thus far about setting categories, creating manual columns, and doing a weighted versus a total point grade? This is so important to set that up in the beginning of the semesters. I can't tell you how many times we've helped an instructor and then they go and they set it up and then this changes and now you have to, work with the student and explain to them why their grade has gone from maybe an A to a C. Casey, what's the difference between exempting an assignment and just not putting it in a category? So when you create it, I don't think you cannot tie it to a category. You might have to tell me if I'm wrong on that, but exempting it would be when you exempt it from an overall grade, it's not going to be calculated into the overall grade. When you go here, Casey's asking, and I were to exempt it, then it would not calculate into that overall grade. Did that answer your question, Casey? Ah, that's creative. I never thought about that. I would probably use the exempt tool. I mean, I'm sure that probably works. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. You just had to work harder, huh, to do that. But what Casey had done is she had actually created a 0 to exempt it, but I would use the exemption tool. That way it knows not to calculate it into the overall grade. So I want to show you I want to show you guys a really cool tool that, thank you, Casey, that I absolutely love. So I'm teaching this semester, and one of the biggest complaints we've gotten, and again, I'm being transparent, is, gosh, Dawn, I have to click 20 different times to get, to the grading. So here's some things you can do. First off, up here where it says search gradebook, let's say that I know that I am going to grade the online discussion board. So I start to type that in the search field and I click here, and now I have just displayed just the online grading. I don't have to look at my big grade book with all this other stuff. I can go through each one of my students and see, oh, I have, Dawn didn't turn anything in, so she's got the auto 0. I can see that BB user 1 has a new submission, so I need to grade that now, and such and so forth. Another thing you can do is, let's say that you have one student and they were out ill, and now they've gone in and you've allowed them to make up that work, or you've had to allow them to make up that work. And so now you're going to go in and you want to see everything you need to grade for that student. So now I'm going to go in here and I can display that user and go through and now work my way through what needs to be graded. Really fast, really quick. I've seen teachers use it. I'm going back to that discussion board. Whoops, where are my hands on the keyboard? Let's see here. I go back to that discussion board, and let's say I had students, I can click in here and do 0, 0, 0 if I don't use the automatic 0 feature. We had a teacher who had a lot of students, a lot of assignments, and he found this filtering mechanism to be really invaluable in terms of being able to grade quickly. If you've not been curious and clicked on this one, this allows you to do multiple filtering. So you can filter it by an individual, and then you can filter by just assignment. So when you click this, it's actually going to break down just the assignment category. Let's say, I know Jen calls on the call tonight. She does essays, right? So maybe she wants to filter the student and look at all their essays. So filtering is extremely powerful. It allows you to see things quickly, and then also not only to see it quickly, but being able to grade it, right away. Now I know I can go right into BB user 1. I've got the career survey response that I'm going to grade, and now I can get right to it. It's also another wonderful way if you have students who come to your office and you want to show them how they're doing in the gradebook, but we always joke about this one, but your hands are like covering up everything else. You can simply, clear out the filters. Let's say BB number 2 is coming to see you, and you can say, BB number 2, you got some work to do. Not doing some well here. Okay, so now you can just filter them out. You can show them their gradebook. They can see what's going on, etc. So hopefully, I don't know if anybody's using the filtering. It's very powerful. To me, it saves me tons of time when I'm doing grading. Speaking of grading, let's take a look at grading. So now we see that we have a new submission here. Now I know that it's really easy to go up here. This is a discussion board, and I can go into discussions, right? And I can click on that discussion board, and I can open it up, and I can look. I can click on grades and participation, right? And I can go into the discussion. Oops. Give me a second. Sure, I'm showing you the easier way, huh, guys? And I can, just really quick look and say, okay, this person did this, and not grade here, but grade back in the gradebook. And I would highly recommend grading in that content area. So let me go back. Let me get out. Let's go back into the gradebook. And there's just, there's so many tools in there that I would recommend doing that way. So now let's go back to user number 2, and I click this. It'd be easy for me to go 100 points, boom, I'm done, right? But I'm going to take a view, I'm going to look at it from a view perspective. It's going to open it up to BB user 1. These are hyperlinks. I can click on that, and what it's going to do is it's going to highlight below in color the respondents, their response, and then in red will be the other contrasting color if they've done some replies to classmates. It's really nice because it highlights, I don't know if you use discussion boards or if you've noticed that, it highlights not only their response but also the replies if you do require that. Over here on the right, some really cool information. I find it really interesting looking at like grade complexity and different things like that, word variation, and it even tells you word count. Some of you actually will say 50 words or less in this particular discussion topic. Also, when I come here, I have the ability to put the grade in. I would highly recommend putting the grade in here, hitting enter, and then I have this little plus sign here. This is how I can write feedback in a discussion board that goes individually to that respondent, to BB user 1. So now I can type in feedback here to that person, and they're going to be able to see that little gray or that little purple, looks like a little page right next to their name, and they will be able, looks just like this, and they will be able to read your feedback. As an example, actually, let's do this. This would probably be more reflective, right? And my feedback would be sure you reply to others. That's part of the assignment, right? And then I come in here, and you can either post now, and if you're not familiar with that, you do have to post grades. What happens is um, it's basically the release to the students. So as long as you grade everything and you don't post it, students can't see it. This was another area that got a lot of people this last go around when Mary Elizabeth was pulling grades for a VISO. Teachers were saying, oh, my grades are in there, but they weren't posted. You'll notice in the grade book, it'll have a little green post just adjacent to the grade, and you'll know that it's graded. So I'm not going to post it here for now because I want to show you the grade book. And then I would proceed to move to the next respondent and read it, add the grade, add feedback, etc. Okay. Now this student, you can see BB user put their response, and then user number 1 replied, and then they responded. I'm going to jump out of here for a moment. So now you can see the grade, but notice there's nothing posted here. So if I am all done grading, let's assume I'm done grading. So I'll go into this one, I'll say view, and we'll pretend like I read it. They also forgot to reply. Oh no, they did reply, didn't they? Okay, and then I'm not going to post it here. Presumably I haven't. I can tell that there's no posting here because there's no green, just the adjacent that says posted. I can come up here, left click, do post. It'll post, ask me if I want to post all attempts. I say post all grades. Now it's posted everything. It's not going to do my auto zeros, but I can override an auto zero if a student, if I don't have the new feature, the prohibit late submissions, then I can override it and the student can submit. Let's see here. I'm just trying to think. I know we're getting really close to time and I want to leave some time. Is there 10 quizzes for 33% of the grade? Would I need to have all 10 in gradebook on day 1? No. So Dave asked, he has 10 quizzes, all 33%. Would I have to have all 10? You wouldn't have to have them all in the gradebook, David, but what I would recommend would be to create those manual columns so that you can set your gradebook up ahead of time. And then as you add those quizzes, you can delete those manual columns. I am here to tell you guys that we do know, I think it's a release in August, that you will not have to create those that workaround where you create these false manual columns until you add the assignments. You will be able to preset categories like you were able to do in original. So just for now, that would be the workaround, creating the manual column, putting in those calculations. Yes, so Jamie said if you're using categories, then you're right. If you're using categories, then all you have to do is have the one category, create one manual column, then you can do your 33%. Dave, if you're doing 10 of them each at 33%, well, that wouldn't mathematically work out, but let's say if you did 10 and they were 10% each, then you would have to do those 10 columns if you were doing
then
points.
all 10 together are worth a third of the grade, the total grade.
Oh, then I would do one column, do your category, wait and do your 33% there.
Okay, thanks so much. That works out.
You're welcome. And I just want to show one last feature, and I know I didn't get to show a lot of grading, and I'm not in a hurry if you guys want to stay or if you have any questions, specific questions. But I want to show you something that just came out. I know we sent out an email to everyone, a notification. This is a very new feature that just came out. I have gone back into my course and added it. Again, it depends on your, your rules and your class, but under due date, there is now a new option where you can prohibit late submissions. What this helps with is many instructors like to use release conditions or show and hide feature on their folder. And presently, if a folder is hidden with an assignment inside of that folder, the student can't see the grade. So then what you have to do is make this folder visible. Well, then the big question was, well, gosh, what would prevent my student from submitting a late assignment? Which the answer was you couldn't prevent them from submitting a late assignment. It would show late in the grade book, but it wouldn't prevent it. This feature here, now turned on, would prohibit a late submission. So you would just turn it on, hit save. Let's just say that you have a student, they were out ill, and the student is giving you the appropriate documentation, and you've said, okay, I'm going to accept the late assignment because you were out ill. Now I'm going to give you an exception for that particular assignment. To give a student an exception, you go back into the Gradebook list view under students, and you find that particular student. Actually, excuse me, you go into that assignment. So let's say it was the career response assignment. You locate that student and you come over to the ellipsis and you'll see add or edit exceptions. So once again, I'm in the assignment. I see my display of my students, their submissions, and I come over and I do add or edit exceptions. And then I would come over here, I would give them another opportunity, and then I would hit save. What will happen is this little purple ribbon will appear by the student's name. That means that they are given an exception. I do want to let you know that if you do have a student in your course that is on an accommodation and you've set that accommodation up in the beginning of the semester, it will also display a purple ribbon. This purple ribbon for the exception will go away once you grade the student submits and you grade that accepted item. So real quick, I'm going to take a look on, filtering, annotating. I didn't get to messaging. I didn't get to annotation. I know many of you are familiar with
annotation.
I know Heather's on the call. We had kind of a unique situation this week with her course. Anytime there's an attachment with the exception inside of a test question, right, Heather? Anytime there's an attachment and the student submits an attachment, not writes the content or responds in a, and let me do one here. Let's go to Mindset Writing Assessment, and let's go here. There's so much we could tell you guys, and we always run out of time, but if the student submits a written assignment and they attach it, you will see their content here. Notice it always talks about the conversion process can change some of the spacing. I sometimes, if I look at a student's work and I require MLA, APA, whatever that might be, I'll actually look at the document to ensure that they are following the right formatting if I do have those expectations. If they just type in the field, the rich text editor, the annotation will not display. It has to be an attachment. You can provide feedback here. I will tell you, I learned the hard way. If you don't hit save and you come up here and add a grade, this will disappear. And nothing's worse than typing a really nice lengthy feedback, forget to hit save, go in, give the student a grade, and then the feedback goes away, which, oh, maybe they fixed that feature. It used to not do that. Be sure that you put the grade here in the attempt versus up here as the final grade. It may display as an overridden grade. If you give more than one attempt, you have to open up the first attempt, then go back and see the second attempt. You can delete a first attempt. It literally will delete it, and the second attempt will now become the first attempt. That was really, really quick. I'm hoping that you found it worth your time, that you learned some things this evening, some extra tips and tricks. Maybe have an opportunity to go back and do some modifications in your gradebook. If you have specific questions, I'm going to open the floor up, and Jamie and I are here to answer any of those questions. And if we can't answer them right away, we can always schedule time with you later. If not, that is all that I have for now. And thank you guys. Thank you so much for taking your time this evening. Casey, thanks for the great questions. And we really appreciate you coming this evening. If you like the evening workshops, please let us know. We'll be sure to offer some more again. Thank you, everyone.